US President Barack Obama has said that before any drone strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured. Yet during one 5-month period, nearly 90% of people killed by US drone strikes in Afghanistan were not the intended targets. That's according to the Drone Papers, a new report by the Intercept based on leaked US documents. So, do drone strikes create more terrorists than they kill? I'm joined in the arena to debate this by Glenn Greenwald, best-selling author, award-winning journalist and founding editor of The Intercept, and Christine Fair, professor of security studies at Georgetown University, who has worked in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. Glenn Greenwald, you've been a long-standing critic of US drone strikes. You've said drones constitute a campaign of terror in places like Pakistan. What do the leaked documents published by The Intercept tell us that's new, that in your view strengthens the case against drones?
What they do primarily is confirm what the people in the regions where the drones have been killing people have been saying, which is that far more often than not, they're killing people not who are the targets, but who are actually innocent. One document in particular, the one that you just referenced, is one of the ones that made the source who has worked with these programs come forward, that has said that 9 out of 10 of the people they kill are not the targets. And you've heard this from people in Afghanistan and Pakistan continuously. You've heard it from researchers and scientists and other people who have studied it, who have said that the reason we're constantly turning more people into terrorists than we're killing is because the anger and rage from these innocent victims is what then causes people to want to bring violence to the United States.
Christine Fair, you've called drones the most successful tool that the United States and Pakistan have to eliminate dangerous militants. But if 9 out of 10 drone strikes are not getting the person they're supposed to get, how is that a successful tool? How is that not going to upset and exacerbate the problem?
I'm going to push back on several things that Glenn said. Many of the statements that he just made are not empirically buttressed. Many of the people that write about this actually haven't been to Pakistan where the drones are actually used. And so you actually have this problem. We don't know who was targeted, and we don't know who was actually killed. And I'm going to argue that this actually isn't knowable with the tools that have been used thus far. There's only one journalist who's actually done this in what I think is the most empirically defensible way, and that's a journalist, Chris Albrighton with the Associated Press. He actually sent a stringer to Waziristan, and he began talking to the locals.
And what was his conclusion?
His conclusions were, with the exception of one catastrophic drone strike, which really was a humongous mistake, about 90% of the people killed by the locals themselves said about 90% of them were militants. So we have a big difference of opinion between those people who are based in Lahore, the cosmopolitan elites, who view drones as a violation of Pakistani sovereignty and all the legal issues that get raised. But when you are talking to the people who live in the proximity of the militants, they have a very different story.
Well, let me mention one. You've talked for a really long time, so maybe I can address some of the things that you actually said.
Let Glenn respond to a couple of the points.
Yeah, I'd like to. So I think there's actually a person who lives in the region who happens to be the winner of the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize.
Who doesn't know anything about Fatah.
You're talking about Malala Yousafzai.
Right.
She knows nothing about drones, and she knows nothing about Fatah. Drones are not using
the White
KKK.
House and spoke with President Obama, and what she said was not, "Thank you so much for using drones to kill the militants who put a bullet into my head and who are trying to suppress the rights of girls." What she said in her statement was, quote, "I expressed my concern that drones are fueling terrorism. Innocent victims are killed, and they lead to resentment among the Pakistani people." It's what the same study, the same conclusions from the NYU Stanford study said, and the lead reporter on the story in The Intercept on drones is Jeremy Scahill, who has spent many years in all of the regions in which drones have fallen, including Afghanistan, Yemen, and Somalia.
Nonsense.
He made a film that was nominated for an Academy Award and wrote a 600-page book about dirty wars. There is abundant evidence that drones are killing innocent people. You have to be pathological to deny it at this point.
I guess all Muslim countries and all Muslim polities and all Muslim legal systems in Muslim countries are the same to you. I actually bring nuance to this. I'm sorry, I cannot accept
Christine, let me put some nuance to you. The British government did polling in Pakistan's tribal areas a few years ago. This is a British government on CIA drone strikes. They found in the tribal areas, 59% of the public in 2010 said they were never justified. That went up to 63% in 2011. Who knows what it is today? So the polling doesn't quite support what you're saying.
Actually, what you don't understand is how polling, I actually do a lot of polling in Pakistan. What you find is that a lot of people don't answer the question at all.
But the ones who do?
Well, but you're missing the science of this. This is called social desirability bias. Okay. So I'm going to argue, and it's very difficult to do this well because the person doesn't know the person doing the survey work. Now, I also want to go back to the NYU report. I'm pro-choice. If Planned Parenthood did a study that talked about the benefits of abortion, we would immediately call the nonsense flag on that report. The NYU Stanford study was supported, facilitated in every way, shape, or form by FFR and Reprieve, which is an advocacy group avowedly against drones. They did not include any of the pro-drone voices. And I'm going
to let Glenn respond to you because you made a long
I'm going to make my final
point. A quick point on my own question. The British government, though, are not an advocacy group against drones. So you dismissed the British government's poll as well.
I'm actually, what I'm telling you, again, the nuance may not be appreciated here. Polling work in conflict areas is very difficult to elicit the truth because the person does not know, is the survey person in question CIA? Are they ISI? Are they the militant? And actually the militant organizations...
So are you saying we can't know?
I'm telling you that you can't know, but I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to go to the point of Ababil.
Very briefly.
It is a very brief point because this speaks to how some people view the drones, which are very different from people like Glenn Greenwald. You're familiar with Surat al-Fil in the Quran. When an army of elephants attacked the Kaaba.
I'm worried this isn't going to be brief. We've got limited time.
I'm going to tell you how brief it is. And you should know the Quran, I'm presuming, Surat al-Fil. So the black swallows who dropped stones to repel the elephant army that was attacking Kaaba, those who live in proximity of the terrorists, they call drones ababil. So this is a voice that you folks try to exclude.
This is just rank propaganda at this point.
Not
You have this mountain of... Are you capable of remaining quiet while other people speak?
You made a very long point. Let Glenn make his point.
There's this mountain. There's this mountain of evidence. You have the NYU Stanford.
Hold on, Christine. Let Glenn make his point.
You have this NYU Stanford study. You have the data of the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. You have the documents that were just provided to us by this source. You have the statement of the 2014 Nobel Prize Peace Prize winner.
A 16-year-old.
You're not letting Glenn make his point
because she doesn't want it to be known that there's an abundance of data.
He's quoting reports. You can respond to the reports in a moment.
And then on the other side, you have someone who said, I am the anointed spokesperson of the Pakistani people. I went there and some have whispered to me that they like drones. Let me cite a professor at Georgetown University who is a specialist in South Asia, Sarah Waheed, who wrote in The Nation in October 2014 about Professor Fair and other cheerleaders for drone programs and what they're doing. And she said, quote, the anti-human rights message is clear. The voices of people who live under the threat of drones are inherently unreliable, much less reliable than state officials or elite liberal Pakistanis who favor drone strikes. There is enormous amounts of evidence that because of the number of innocent people that we're killing, not just in Pakistan, but Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, but also in that region, that there is a great amount of anti-American sentiment. There are Pew polls, global polls, that show that 66% of Pakistanis disapprove of drone strikes, 3% approve it. That's the Pew Global Poll from 2014.
Also mistaken.
And so all she does is attack all of the people, all of the researchers, all of the journalists, all of the defense officials who have said so.
Let me put this point back to you. You're saying the polling is, we're not being nuanced on the polling. You're saying, hold on, let me finish my question, then you can come back. You're saying Malala doesn't know what she's talking about. General Stanley McChrystal, who's not an advocacy man, former head of the US forces in Afghanistan, has said the resentment created by US drones is much greater than the average American appreciates. They are hated on a visceral level.
Senator McChrystal actually doesn't know Pakistan. And here I'm going to tell you something else. It's a very common bromide to say drones make more terrorists. Would you believe there's no evidence for it? But I'm going to tell you one thing for which there is very good evidence. The drone program in Pakistan has resulted in a cessation in certain kinds of attacks which are correlated with the drone strikes. For example, I'm going to give a very good example. The way the drone strikes work is that there's a concept of quality of terror in terms of the kinds of attacks that they can perpetrate and the quantity. Okay. Both the quality and quantity have declined.
Well, let me put that to Glenn.
I haven't made a point. The TTP have not been able to attack the kinds of headquarters of the military that they did in the past.
Would you concede that in some areas, regardless of what you think about the morality, regardless of the innocent people getting killed, on an effectiveness basis, they are taking out people like Baitullah Masood, former head of the Pakistani Taliban?
It's not just General McChrystal. Here's what General Michael Flynn, who ran the Defense Intelligence Agency, told the Intercept last week, my media outlet, about drones. Even when it works, even when we take out a big name, he said, quote, it makes us all feel good for 24 hours. And you know what? It doesn't matter. It just makes them a martyr. They get replaced. It just creates a new reason for all of them to fight us even harder.
Let me ask you this, Glenn. Let me ask you this, Glenn.
Is there
any case? Everybody in the world doesn't know what they're talking about except for her.
Put the data argument to one side for a moment. Let me ask you this question.
Data is important. Data are important.
And we're arguing over the data. You're rejecting the data that Glenn cited. We've established that.
He's citing opinion. He's not citing data.
I think that's unfair. I mean, he cited the New York University report. You say you don't like the report, but it's still data.
No, let me tell you what's wrong with
the New York University School of Law found
that is an advocacy-driven report. That's not the same thing
So
as
everyone is
research.
advocating except you.
You're the only objective source.
I'm just wondering if New York University, Stanford University,
the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, the top levels of the U.S. military.
Planned Parenthood did a report that talked about the virtues of abortion.
But I quoted the British government and Stanley McChrystal to you.
FFR is an advocacy organization, and you think that report is fine?
Okay, you've made that point. Can we move the discussion on? I want to ask Glenn a question. Would you concede that in certain instances, for example, the killing of Bayatullah Masood, leader of the Pakistani Taliban, by a drone strike in 2009, would you say, actually, that one I'm fine with?
I think that everybody agrees that there are certain legitimate targets for the U.S. government to kill. Nobody disputes that. That's never been in dispute. The problem is that we've been actually engaged in this global assassination program for 14 years now, and there's absolutely no sign that any of this is getting better. In fact, it's the position of every Western government that the threat of terrorism is actually worse than it's ever been. If you talk to people, for example, in Yemen, they will tell you that until 2009, there was no al-Qaeda presence in Yemen. Only once the U.S. began drone attacking and killing innocent civilians did the Yemeni population get driven into the arms of Islamic radicals.
I interviewed Ben Rhodes recently, Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor. He said it's a weapon of war. People die with a weapon of war. What do you say to people who say, why are you obsessed with the technology, with the method of killing?
What right does the U.S. government have to go around the world, meeting in secret, essentially accusing people of being terrorists, of committing crimes, convicting them in secret, no due process, no evidence of any kind being presented, and then simply deleting them from the earth?
The last several years, for me, what's been most dismaying is that the targets that we are eliminating in FATA are not, strictly speaking, to my view, in compliant with the authorization for the use of military force. We are mostly using our program to kill Pakistan's terrorists. We are no longer killing individuals that pose a threat to us directly. Right?
Or to anyone.
Not only is she right about that, she is right about that. The documents that we released, I think one of the most significant revelations is that it's not just that the people that we're killing aren't direct threats to us in the way that the original AUMF authorized, namely the people who did 9/11 or those who are associated with them. A lot of the people we're killing are just local militants who are interested in the local conflicts, who are purposely targeting, not just accidentally killing, in a way that's way beyond what Congress ever authorized and what the American people probably would think is justified. This has become a war that has absolutely expanded far beyond its original intention.
We're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. That's our show. Up Front will be back next week.